everyone, it's Jess from Meyer Hatchery, and today we are creating some projects using some of those fall molt feathers. First up is a feather lantern. All you need is some sort of glass container. I'm using a mason jar I can't use for canning anymore. A container that you've put some Mod Podge or glue mixed with water, a paintbrush for spreading out your glue, and a little tea light. I'm using my one that's shaped like a pumpkin. And lastly, you're going to need some feathers. I made sure to give my feathers a good cleaning and allowed them to dry overnight, so they're all ready for us to use on our feather lantern. To get started, I'm going to use my paintbrush and I'm going to put a layer of glue right onto my mason jar here. And then I'm going to grab my first feather, put it into place, use even more glue, and start to spread out that feather on my mason jar. You want to really spread out your feathers so you can see all the awesome parts of the feather. Something to keep in mind, if you're using a feather, especially like a turkey or a duck feather, you may notice that the quill is wanting to stand up towards the edge of the feather when you're trying to adhere it to your jar. You may need to carefully trim off the bottom of your feather there so it lays flat onto your glass container. Here's what our jar looks like with all the feathers in place. You want to allow your jar to dry overnight, and then after everything is all dry, feel free to add some decoration to the top of your jar. I added a little bit of rope around the top because I thought it looked kind of cool. Here's what our jar looks like, all dry and completed. And here's what our feather lantern looks like with the tea light on the inside. Oh, that looks so pretty. What a way to celebrate our flock. Our other project is we're going to make some UV resin feather keychains. And the kit that I'm using, I've left the link to it in the description below. Make sure you follow all safety precautions when working with resin. To get started, we're going to put a very small layer of resin down in the bottom of our form that we have here. And this is just going to create a nice bed for our feather to sit on so our feather doesn't stick out the back of our keychain. I'm using a silicone tool to spread it out so it's nice and flat. And then I'm going to put my UV light over the top of my form that I have here, and I'm going to allow it to cure for 1 cycle. This is just going to help that resin lay nice and flat. Now we need to place our feather, and you can do this in one of 2 ways. You can go ahead and just place the feather on there, kind of push it into the back and put your resin on top. Or if your feather keeps trying to pop up, you can put a few dots of the UV resin onto the feather, cure it for 1 cycle, and then go ahead and complete the process of adding that top layer of resin onto your feather. Make sure that you spread out your feather so you can see, again, all the amazing colors in the feather. And my first layer was still kind of sticky, so my feather kind of sat into place while I put on that final layer of resin. And I'm going to fill the rest of our mold up with the resin that we have. And again, using my silicone tool, I pushed my resin out to the edges so I didn't have any gaps or anything like that. I also tried to watch for bubbles. Sometimes bubbles are inevitable, and I actually think they look kind of cool with the feathers, so I don't mind them. But you can use your tool to help you with those bubbles as well. After 3 rounds with the curing light, here's what our feather keychain looks like. It is so cool. That feather is laying just perfectly in the middle of the resin, and it looks like it's floating in there. You want to carefully peel it off your tape that you have there. And sometimes the tape's pretty sticky, so be very careful when you're peeling it off there. I also made sure to allow my keychain to sit until it was completely cool as well. So I ran the 3 cycles, let it sit, and then we were doing our unmolding of our feather keychain that we have here. But here's what it looks like. How cool is that? You can add a keychain on the top here, and your feather keychain is ready to go. Here's another version that we did, just so you could see. I followed the same exact process of putting the resin at the bottom, allowed it to cure, added my feather on top. With this one, I found that the quill was actually a little bit too thick at the bottom and my feather wasn't laying the way I wanted it to. So I actually ended up trimming the edge of it before I put on that final layer of resin. Hopefully we've given you some inspiration to make some fall molt feather crafts of your own. If you have any questions, be sure to let us know in the comments below. As always, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and click that bell so you're the first to know every time a new video has been released. Thank you so much for watching.